Hey y'all, it's Courtney Shavante and I'm back with another tutorial. I'm so happy to be here with this one. This one's super exciting for me because I got really creative with this one. Before we get started, make sure you hit that hit that subscribe button for me, and also hit the notification bell so that way you don't miss any videos that I do put out. And let's get started. So what I did was I went ahead and mixed up my resin. From there, I use this silicone spatula that I have, and I am just pushing the resin into the etchings of this tray. And I'm doing that because the etchings tend to hold a lot of air bubbles. So I'm just making sure that I get all those removed. So I go through with the heat gun as well, and also a bit of alcohol, just kind of going back and forth with that. You can kind of see them disappear and pop on camera a bit as well. So you don't want to use a lot for that because this mold is rather thin and whatnot. So if you do find this mold, then I would put a whole lot right there. It's a rather thin tray. So what I'm doing now is I went ahead and mixed up my glitter mix, and I'm also mixing up my mica powder, getting that mixed in very well. And then I'm going to add in some of my pink glow powder and get that mixed in. I do like to mix them in separately just to help reduce the amount of bubbles that get trapped in there. Add in the remaining of your resin and just get that mixed all together and whatnot. Add a little bit more pigment as you see fit. I'm also adding in some alcohol ink. I use the opaque alcohol ink because I don't want this tray to be see-through. So you see me popping that in there, and make sure you mix really well after adding in the alcohol ink because it does tend to sit on the top. So you're going to need to pull your stick from the bottom to the top to mix, if that makes sense. Alright, so to start with, you're going to pour the glitter into the rim part of your tray. Make sure it's a nice little even layer. It's okay if it gets on the tray just a tad because we do want it to kind of seep over just a bit, and I'll show you what I'm talking about soon. Alright, use your heat gun to thin that out. Make sure that glitter sinks towards the front of the tray, and then from there you're going to take that pink mix that we made and pour that towards the center. Create a nice even layer. Make sure that mold is nice and full. From there you're going to be taking a toothpick and you're just going to drag a little bit of the glitter up from that rim towards the middle of the tray just a bit, just so that way it's more of a blendy type thing when we do demold it. Spray with your alcohol, of course, and then we're going to let that stand. Alright, after that's had a chance to cure and it's nice and hard, we're going to go ahead and wiggle this from our mold. So, of course, we're going to pull at our edges and everything. And due to how I poured this one, I wasn't worried about the meniscus effect. So there's no sharp edge. Therefore, I will not have to do any sanding. So I'm just pulling that up off of the etching, making sure it doesn't bend my tray. And this is what we have right here. You see what I was talking about with the glitter just kind of pulling up on the sides a bit. And as far as there not being a lot of air bubbles in those etchings. So we're good to go to the next step. Grab your paint. I am using this blue metallic paint that I find to be just really beautiful, and it complements the blue glitter that I have inside this glitter mix, and it's just gonna really bring it together really nicely. So I'm gonna pour that into my cup. I don't need a lot, so I'm just pouring a tiny little bit. I am getting a flat tip brush like this, and I am just going to dip it into my paint, and I'm going to brush it onto those etchings. Now, I do try to make sure that I stay in the lines and whatnot, but if it does go over a bit, it is completely fine. I actually do like just a tad bit of overage, so it just kind of grabs everything, because on those smooth parts, it's really easy to pull that off when you're ready. And I'll show you guys how to do that shortly. Now when you're painting, you also want to kind of push the paint into the etchings with the paintbrush, so you don't want to just like glide it on top. You really want to like kind of push it into those holes, so that way it really grabs the paint and creates a nice thick layer. Make sure you are painting evenly, so smooth that out. Make sure you're going over and smoothing out those lines. Smooth it, smooth it, smooth it. Alright, so what we're doing now is we're just going to let that dry. You see me fanning it a bit, but that wasn't drying fast enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my heat gun off camera. I'm just heating that and drying it out, coming through, doing my next layer. So I'm going to pretty much be doing it the same as before. This layer doesn't have to be quite as thick as that first layer was, so you're just going to go through making sure that, you know, it's nice and even and whatnot, and you're not having any blank spaces, any negative space. Let it dry with the heat gun once again, and then you're going to come back and do it one last time. Make sure this is nice and smooth since this is the top one. Then from there, we're going to allow that to dry as well. After it's had the chance to dry, I want you to go ahead and get a damp rag and just kind of clean up around the etchings of the eyes so we can have that nice crisp line where the eyes are. Feel free to use some alcohol as well. It may help loosen up that paint a bit too. Alright, wipe around to make sure you don't have any residue just floating around anywhere. And then from here, we are going to be preparing our little squeeze bottle with a needle tip point. Pour some paint into that needle tip point, and then you're going to screw the bottle on and make sure that the paint is at the tip of your bottle. Now, for all my ladies who do makeup, this should be really simple for you. You're just going to basically wing that liner the same way you do yours. So go ahead and start from that outer piece, create that line, and then thin it out going towards the middle of the eye, and then come back towards the top to create the tip wing. I'm repeating that on the other side as well, and I'm also filling it in as I go. I am not squeezing this squeeze bottle too hard because I don't want this paint to just be seeping out at the top. I want to have control over how fast this paint is coming out, and that's key here with these little fine details. And so I'm extending the wing, that liner. And then I am taking a very, very, very thin paintbrush and I dampened it in some alcohol. And from there, I'm just going to clean up some of these lines so I can make sure that my liner matches. So this is going to be kind of like the concealer part. Alright, so once that's had a chance to, you know, get on there and I got it exactly how I want it, I'm going to refill the bottle because now we're going to be doing some design. So I'm tapping the bottle, making sure all the paint is towards the bottom because I don't want it squirting air. Use a paintbrush to just kind of find the center of that tray, and then you're going to add a dot somewhere in the middle of the head towards your liking. From there, you're just going to start extending it out using a combination of different lines and dots. Now, this is very randomized for me, so I do want to make sure that is clear because I am just kind of doing it as I go here. There's no really rhyme or reason to what I got going on, okay? So just do what feels right to you. Come in with that rag as necessary to clean it up. It's okay if you do make a mistake. It's super easy to clean up versus the etchings where it kind of holds that paint. On this smooth part, it does not. So that also does mean that you do need to be rather careful when you are placing this paint as well. you are going to have to kind of adjust the bottle throughout as well, so that's completely fine if you're noting yourself do that, because like I said, you don't want to use a lot of paint because you don't want the paint to just be pouring out. You want to have control over the amount of paint that's coming out of that needle tip. So you're going to be adjusting your pressure as you go, so you'll increase the pressure as you're making those larger dots. You'll use hardly any pressure at all when you're using when you're making the tiny little dots. When I made this arc, I did use a little bit more pressure than in the other areas, and you can see me kind of making smaller dots in procession, decreasing pressure as I go. Now I did drop a little bit of alcohol on there, but no biggie. I just went ahead and dried that up with the heat gun real quick, and then I'm just going to wipe it using that damp cloth once I get to where I'm going. Alright, so I'm adding a little bit more paint. Then from here, what you're going to see me do is you're just going to see me add on a little bit more to this design, just because I want it to be a nice little focal point. So I do want it to have, you know, something going on there. I do also want to tie in these white dots into the bottom somehow. I didn't want to make a mouth on her, so I'm just doing some little exotic dots underneath the eyes and everything, because I think that's a really cute way to make this pop and give it a nice little tribal look, because that's what I'm going for here. Alright, so you're going to go ahead and let that dry, and then you're going to get your clear gloss spray, and from there you're going to create a nice even layer. Make sure you are further back than I was. Do as I say, not as I do, because then I had these clumps on here and you don't want that. Alright, after letting that dry completely, I went ahead and mixed up a little bit more resin, and then I'm just going to apply a top coat onto here, a nice thin top coat that just covers everything and make sure it's all nice and even. I'm using my popsicle stick to push the resin towards the edges and everything, making sure there are no holes. Get into those etchings as well. Use that heat gun. The heat gun I told you is my best friend. I just use that to thin that out and make sure that's further even, and when it gets the bubbles popped as well. I'm also going to be using a little bit of alcohol as well to make sure I further pop those bubbles, but I did that off camera. So let that stand, and now boom, here we have our glow show. So this is how it looks after being charged underneath my black light that I've shown you plenty of times before. It looks very beautiful. You can still see how those designs pop and everything. It's not quite as noticeable as in the light, but it's still very, very, very pretty. I'm loving how that turned out. Yes. Alright, so now we're going to move on to full light out in the sunlight. And this is how our baby looks. I love how this glitter sparkles here. She is absolutely amazing. Yes. Okay, so I'm loving how fleeky her winged liner is. I love the little tribal design dots under her eyes and even the design on her forehead. Like, she's absolutely stunning, and I feel like anyone would be so lucky to have her. I'll be getting her posted up on the site soon, along with so many other things. So make sure you check out CourtneyShavante.com. If you do like this tutorial, make sure you do like, comment, and subscribe for me, and turn on that notification bell. I can't wait to see you guys later, and thank you so much for joining me. Catch you later. Bye now.